I found them huddled beneath the highway overpass, the rain falling in sheets, soaking everything in its path. The man was bent low, clutching something to his chest. The faint flicker of hope I'd felt when I first spotted them disappeared as I got closer. The baby in his arms, her face pale and streaked with tears, seemed feverish. Her tiny body trembled against the cold, and I could see the beads of water running down her skin, mixing with the sweat on her forehead. The man's own appearance mirrored hers, exhaustion written all over his face, hair matted to his scalp. He was drenched, soaked to the bone, just like the rain-soaked world around us. This wasn't just any homeless man. This wasn't a random encounter. This was my grandson, James. I had spent the last 30 years believing that the pain from my son's betrayal, his disappearance with our life savings, was the worst I'd ever face. The hollow betrayal, the years of isolation that followed Spencer's heart attack, the emptiness that settled into my life. I never imagined that I would find myself standing in the mud under a highway bridge in the pouring rain, staring at my grandson's face, this stranger who shared the blood of my son and my husband. I didn't know how to approach him. He looked so much like Spencer, yet somehow like a stranger. I couldn't imagine how much pain and hardship he had endured to be here, in the dirt beneath this overpass. I took a deep breath, my chest tightening with every passing moment, but I had to speak. "James Sterling?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the sound of the storm. His head snapped up, and his eyes met mine, guarded, wary. He didn't speak at first, but I could see the tension in his posture. He shifted his baby daughter, holding her tighter against his chest, as if to protect her from some invisible threat. His expression hardened. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice hoarse, raw from disuse or perhaps the illness that seemed to be overtaking his daughter. His protective instinct was clear. He wasn't just guarding himself, but also this tiny, fragile life in his arms. "My name is Alice Sterling," I said, crouching down to meet his gaze. I knew I had to approach him gently. "I'm your grandmother. Your father told you I was dead, but I'm not. I'm here." There it was, the look I knew so well, the shock, the disbelief. His face twisted in confusion, then shifted to suspicion as though he couldn't possibly believe what he was hearing. My chest clenched. I could see the same hurt in his eyes that I had seen in Spencer's all those years ago. A betrayal so deep it shaped everything about him. "Gregory lied to you," I continued, my voice quieter now. "He lied to you. About me, about everything." James didn't respond at first. His brow furrowed, the rain streaking down his face mixing with the sweat on his forehead. He was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. And just like that, I knew everything had changed. There would be no going back. The folder on my desk sat untouched for days, a constant reminder of everything I'd been avoiding. Black and plain, it blended in with the rest of the paper clutter that filled my office. My assistant had placed it there without comment, understanding better than anyone the gravity of what it contained. I had walked past it for 3 days now, avoiding it, pretending it wasn't there, that I wasn't about to confront everything I had avoided for so long. Each morning, I had sat at my desk with my coffee, moved papers around, made phone calls, all while pretending that the folder didn't exist. But today I was done pretending. The Atlantic Ocean stretched out before me, a brilliant, sunlit canvas beneath the clear Florida sky. I had designed this penthouse myself after Spencer passed away. White marble, glass, steel. Nothing extraneous, nothing unnecessary. It was a place built for clean lines, for the avoidance of sentimentality. I lived here now, and I had for 28 years, but despite all the beauty around me, sometimes it felt like I was just a visitor in my own life, as though I were waiting for something to change. With a resigned sigh, I reached for the folder. It was lighter than I expected, considering what it contained. $30,000 for a 6-page report and a single photograph. Information I had come to learn doesn't weigh much these days. Inside, the first page was a summary, details about James Spencer Sterling, age 28, a factory worker, laid off after the plant downsized, unemployed now, living on the streets. It listed everything that had led to this point: his name, his father's name, Gregory, my son, and then under that one line, estranged. For a moment, I couldn't move past those words, estranged. How simple it sounded, but the weight of it, the years of silence, the complete rupture of family ties. I hadn't heard from Gregory in 30 years. He had taken everything: money, trust, relationships, and disappeared without a trace. And now here was his son, struggling to survive, abandoned, as we had been. The report went on. James had married young, at 22, with Olivia Whitman. A daughter, Sophie, had been born. There were no criminal charges, no signs of trouble until recently, and then the slow unraveling. The dissolution of his marriage, the missed rent payments, the car repossession, his call to his parents for help, his plea for temporary shelter. Denied. I felt a chill crawl through my veins as I read those last 2 words. Request denied. So cold. So familiar. Gregory had done the same thing to us all those years ago when he disappeared. He had stolen everything from Spencer and me, and now, just like that, he had denied his own son. I set the folder down, the words echoing in my head. The final page was a photograph. Grainy, taken from a distance. A man hunched under the overpass. His clothes were ragged, his face gaunt, and in his arms, wrapped in what looked like an old blue jacket, was a small child. A tiny hand was visible, reaching up toward his face as though pleading for comfort. The photo seemed to encapsulate everything: the despair, the lost potential, the family torn apart by lies and greed. I set the photograph down carefully, as though it might disintegrate in my hands. In that moment, I found myself back in the house on Havenwood Drive, the house where Spencer and I had raised our family, the house that had once been filled with laughter, with dreams, with the kind of love that could withstand anything. Now it felt empty. The quiet pressed in on me. Spencer's car was parked in the garage, but there was no sign of him. I found him in his study, staring at the open safe. Empty. His favorite antique desk, where he'd kept his grandfather's pocket watch, was just as I remembered. Drawers hanging open, nothing in them. Spencer sat frozen, his gaze fixed on the empty safe. Gregory took it all, he said, his voice flat, lifeless. He took everything. I called the bank. I called the accountant. I called Gregory's phone. No answer. I turned back to Spencer. By the time I looked at him again, his color had changed. He was gray, ashen. His hand clutched his chest, and he reached out to me. I couldn't reach the phone in time. Spencer died of a broken heart. He had been betrayed by his own son. He had lost everything, and he never recovered. As the memory faded, I found myself back in my penthouse. The photograph lay on my desk. I stared at it. James, Sophie, Spencer's grandson, Spencer's great-granddaughter, living beneath a highway overpass, struggling because Gregory had denied them the same safety and security that Spencer had always wanted for them. For 30 years, I'd been a ghost in my own life. After Spencer's death, I had thrown myself into Havenwood Properties. I didn't care about anything else. Holidays, family gatherings. I withdrew from everything. People in my charity circles had called me an ice queen behind my back, and I never corrected them. But what they didn't understand was that ice preserves things: rage, purpose, memories. I closed the folder. A decision had been made. Tomorrow, I would find them. Tomorrow, I would meet James no matter how much he didn't know me. Tomorrow, I would break the cycle of betrayal that had been started by my own son. The morning came quickly. I had arranged everything in advance, even though I had no idea how I would actually approach James. I had no script for this, no roadmap for what was about to unfold. The private jet was ready, and I felt a surge of determination fill me as I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my coat. This wasn't just another business trip. This was different. I had spent the last few decades carefully constructing a life of distance and detachment, a life without family, without the kind of closeness that had once defined my existence. But now, that life was crumbling around me, piece by piece, and I was about to step into the very heart of it all, the pain, the betrayal, the chance for redemption. As the jet ascended from the West Palm Beach runway, I gazed out of the window, watching the sprawling city below grow smaller and smaller, the expanse of blue ocean stretching out to the horizon. I couldn't stop thinking about James, about the child in his arms, about everything they had endured because of Gregory. The rain continued to pour in Columbus when we landed, a steady, unrelenting downpour that mirrored my own sense of foreboding. I had imagined this moment in my mind 100 times over the years, but I had never imagined the reality would be so stark, so raw. The car ride to the overpass felt like an eternity. The mundane streets of Columbus gradually gave way to the more run-down parts of the city, and as the city's landscape began to shift, I knew we were nearing the place I had come to find. "Ma'am, we're almost there," Thomas, my driver, said quietly, his voice betraying none of the tension I felt. He had been with me for years, always the perfect employee, efficient, respectful, and silent. But I knew he could sense the weight of this journey. He could feel the tension in the air. I didn't respond. I was too lost in my own thoughts, thinking of the moment when I would first see James again, when I would lay eyes on the grandson I never knew I had. My heart ached, and I wasn't sure if it was for the man under the bridge or for the lost years I could never get back. The overpass came into view, a looming structure above us, casting a long shadow over the streets below. It was as if this place had been forgotten by time itself, gritty, weathered, the asphalt littered with trash and debris. As we turned onto the muddy shoulder, I saw the makeshift shelter, tarps, discarded blankets, a shopping cart turned sideways, and there, huddled together, was James and his daughter. I stepped out of the car, my umbrella useless against the pounding rain. It wasn't just the storm above me, but the storm inside my chest that kept me moving forward, pulling me toward them. My shoes sunk into the mud with each step, the rain soaking through my coat. I didn't care. When I was close enough, I saw James more clearly. His eyes, dark and filled with suspicion, locked onto me the moment I stepped into his line of sight. His protective instinct was immediate. He shifted Sophie in his arms, cradling her close as though I might rip her away from him. I didn't blame him. I was a stranger to him, and I had no right to just appear in his life like this. But I had no other choice. "James," I said again, this time softer. I wasn't sure if he had heard me the first time, but he certainly heard it now. His face remained unreadable. His eyes flicked from my face to Sophie's, the tiny, sick girl in his arms, and then back to me. There was no recognition there, just wariness and confusion. I could see how much pain he had been carrying, how his shoulders had grown weary under the weight of it all. I knelt down slowly, lowering myself to his level. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on me, the rain soaking through my coat, but I pushed it aside. "I'm your grandmother," I said, holding his gaze. "I'm Alice Sterling. Your father told you I was dead, but I'm not. I'm here to help." He stared at me for a long time, as though trying to piece the puzzle together. "Grandmother?" he finally muttered, disbelief lacing his words. "My father, he told me you were dead. You were gone. He said He said you didn't want us." There it was, the deep, biting lie that had kept us apart for all these years. Gregory's betrayal had reached its peak in that moment, poisoning everything he touched. "I never wanted that for you," I said softly. "Gregory lied to you. He lied to all of us." His face hardened, and I saw the defensive wall go up in his eyes. "I don't need anyone's help," he said sharply, taking a small step back, the rain still pouring down. His voice was hoarse, raw with the kind of exhaustion that comes from living on the edge for so long. I didn't push him. I wasn't there to force anything. I just needed him to listen. "I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm offering you a way out of this. Your daughter needs medical help. I can get her to a doctor, and I can give you a safe place to stay if that's what you want." His eyes flickered to Sophie, who was beginning to stir restlessly in his arms. The fever was still burning in her small body, and I could see the fear in James's eyes as he looked down at her. "She needs a doctor," I said quietly. "And you need rest, James. You can't keep going like this." His jaw tightened, but I saw the shift in him. The weight of what I was offering seemed to press on him as much as the weight of his daughter in his arms. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know who you are, but I can't risk her getting worse." "You don't have to risk it," I said, my voice firm but kind. "Come with me. I have a car waiting. There's food, warmth, and a pediatrician who can help your daughter. You're not alone in this. Not anymore." He hesitated, the storm swirling around us, but then something in him cracked, the tiniest, most fragile thread of trust, and with that, he nodded. "All right, I'll come with you, but we talk first. If I don't like what I hear, I'm leaving." I nodded in agreement. "I understand." The car ride back to the hotel room was quieter than I expected. James held Sophie close, his gaze fixed out the window. The rain beat against the glass, but inside the car, there was a moment of stillness, of uncertainty. I knew he had to be wondering what kind of woman I was, what my intentions were. I could sense the distrust, the reluctance in every inch of his body, and I didn't blame him. But this wasn't about me. This was about him, about his daughter, and about the chance to rebuild what had been lost. The hotel suite was a far cry from the cold, impersonal shelters James had known. It was warm, inviting. The pediatrician, Dr. Winters, arrived within an hour of our arrival, and I watched James as she examined Sophie. "She needs antibiotics," Dr. Winters confirmed, after a thorough checkup. "A respiratory infection. It's a good thing you got her in here when you did. With proper care, she'll be fine." I could see the relief flood James's face, though it was tinged with exhaustion. He had carried this burden for so long. "She'll be all right?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "She'll be fine," Dr. Winters assured him. "I'll have the medication sent up. Just make sure she gets plenty of rest." I turned to James as the doctor left, a silence stretching between us. He was still so guarded, still so unsure of what was happening, but there was a softness to him now, a fragility that I hadn't seen before. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice thick with gratitude, even though he struggled to show it. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I said, my voice softening. "Just take care of Sophie, get some rest. That's all that matters right now." The evening unfolded in a kind of quiet serenity, an unfamiliar calm. For the first time in days, James seemed to let go of the weight he had been carrying. Sophie slept soundly in the crib next to him, her tiny chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. It was hard to believe just hours ago she had been feverish and clinging to her father in the cold, beneath the overpass. Now she looked so small, so fragile, yet somehow safe. James sat in the armchair, his body slouched, his eyes wary but unguarded for the first time since I met him. The tension that had knotted his shoulders seemed to ease, but the uncertainty was still there, lingering in the room between us. He hadn't yet asked me anything about myself, about Spencer, or what had brought me here. But I knew it would come. It had to. There were too many unanswered questions, too many years of distance to cover. "You must be exhausted," I said, breaking the silence. I had ordered dinner for him, but I could tell he hadn't touched it. He had barely touched the food earlier when Dr. Winters had been with us. I couldn't blame him. How could he focus on anything but his daughter's health when his whole world had been turned upside down? He nodded slowly, not meeting my eyes. "I don't know how you do it. How you just go on, like nothing's changed." I felt the sting of his words. There was truth in them, but they hurt nonetheless. For years, I had lived in this house, in this life, pretending I was fine, pretending that the absence of Spencer and the silence from Gregory hadn't shaped every decision I made. But James' words forced me to confront the fact that I had been running away from my own pain for too long. "I haven't always been fine," I said, my voice quieter now. "I built this life, this penthouse, this business, to avoid dealing with the loss, with the grief. But you're right, nothing has been the same since Spencer died." He looked at me then, really looked at me, as if trying to understand who I was beneath the polished exterior. I knew it wasn't easy to see the woman who had been his grandmother, a woman he had never known, beneath the cold walls of the life I had created. But somewhere in the depths of my heart, I knew I had to let him in. I had to let him see the part of me that had been lost to time, to betrayal, to distance. "You didn't come here to make me feel guilty," he said, finally lifting his gaze to meet mine. His eyes were tired, but there was a glimmer of something else, something soft, something hesitant. I don't understand. Why now? After all these years, why are you helping us?" I took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled, gathering my thoughts. It wasn't easy to explain. I had spent the last 30 years keeping myself busy. After Spencer died, I threw myself into the company, into building Havenwood. But I never truly healed. I buried the pain, the betrayal, and I let it fester. And when I found out about you, about Sophie, it was like something inside me broke open. I couldn't ignore it anymore. You were my family, and I had lost you both without ever knowing it. He shifted in his chair, his expression unreadable. I could tell this wasn't easy for him to hear. "But you had no idea who I was. You didn't know what happened to us." "No, I didn't," I admitted, my voice faltering. But I knew something had gone wrong. I knew Gregory had taken everything, and I couldn't just let it end like that. You didn't deserve to be abandoned. You didn't deserve to live under a bridge, to suffer like this. That's why I'm here. To help you, to give you a chance." He didn't speak for a long time, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. His face remained still, but his eyes told a different story. He was weighing everything, my words, my offer, the possibility that I wasn't just some stranger showing up with ulterior motives. I knew it was hard to trust me. I had given him no reason to. But all I could offer was the truth. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "I'll think about it, about what you said. But I need time, Alice. I don't know how to process all this. You're offering me a place to stay, but I've been on my own for so long. I don't know how to let anyone in." "I understand," I said softly. "Take all the time you need. But I'm here, and I'll be here when you're ready." The rest of the evening passed quietly. I allowed James the space he needed,
and I retired to my own quarters after a brief conversation with the staff. There was something deeply bittersweet about seeing him so distant, yet so close, caught between the remnants of a broken family and the chance for something new, something he had never known. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of Spencer, of the life we had shared, the hopes and dreams we once had for our children and grandchildren. Spencer had built Havenwood with his own hands, with the hope that it would be a place for families to thrive, to feel safe, to build a future. But what had happened to our own family? Had we lost everything because of Gregory's lies? Or was there still something left to salvage? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let James and Sophie slip away again. I wouldn't make the same mistake twice. I would fight for them, just as Spencer would have. The next morning, I awoke early, the sunlight filtering through the blinds of my hotel suite. The storm had passed, leaving a fresh, damp smell in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that today was a turning point. One way or another, things were about to change. I dressed quickly, knowing James would still be adjusting to the reality of our situation. He hadn't asked for any of this, and I couldn't expect him to embrace it immediately. But there was time to rebuild what had been lost, time to reconnect the pieces of our fractured family. I stepped into the hallway and found James waiting outside Sophie's room. He was standing, his hands in his pockets, staring out the window as if lost in thought. His expression was thoughtful, pensive. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach him, but I took a deep breath and walked towards him. "You're up early," I said softly. He turned and looked at me, his face showing a hint of surprise, but then he nodded. "I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about everything you said." I gave him a moment to gather his thoughts. "It's a lot to process, I know, but you don't have to make a decision today. Just take your time. Think about what you need." James looked at me for a long time, and then he sighed, running a hand through his wet hair. "I'm not sure I trust you yet. I don't know if I can, but I see what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. I just don't know if I can let anyone back in. After everything that's happened, I don't know where to start." "I understand," I said softly. "Take all the time you need, but know that I'm here, for you and for Sophie." He glanced at Sophie, who was still asleep in the crib, and back at me. "I'll stay here for now. I won't make any decisions yet, but thank you." I smiled, a small, tentative smile, but it was enough. For the first time, I felt like we were standing on the same ground. The following days were a turning point for both of us. James and I continued to navigate the delicate dance of getting to know each other, piece by piece, slowly building a connection that had been lost to time and betrayal. Sophie, more than anything, was the bridge between us. The joy she brought into our lives was a reminder that life could still be beautiful, even after the worst storms. James had decided to stay at the hotel for a while longer, taking the time he needed to think. I respected his decision. There was no rush. There never had been. But deep down, I knew we couldn't stay in this suspended moment forever. It was time to make a choice, and I needed him to understand that the doors I was opening for him weren't temporary. They were a chance for a new life, a chance to rebuild everything his father had stolen. One evening, after dinner, James and I found ourselves sitting together in the quiet of the suite. The gentle hum of the city outside, the soft rhythm of Sophie's sleep, filled the air with a kind of peaceful stillness. "I've been thinking," James said, his voice quieter than usual. He wasn't looking at me.
his gaze fixed on the rain beginning to fall softly outside. About everything, about what you said, about Spencer, about Havenwood. I waited, not wanting to rush him. I had learned by now that James needed time to process, time to come to his own conclusions. I had no agenda anymore, no expectations. I just wanted him to feel heard, understood, and free to make the choice that was right for him. He didn't get it at first, he continued. I didn't get why you were so insistent on me being part of all this. Why you keep talking about legacy and family when everything I've known has been the opposite. But then I started thinking about Spencer, about how he built this place, about what you said, that it wasn't just about business, but about something more. I nodded, letting his words settle. Spencer believed that a home wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was the foundation of everything, of love, of stability, of a future. And Havenwood wasn't just about buildings. It was about families, finding a place to grow. James turned to face me then, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that caught me off guard. He said quietly, I think I get it now. I don't have to follow the same path, but I want to be part of something that matters. I want to do something that honors Spencer's legacy, not just for me, but for Sophie. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel the weight of his words, the sincerity in them. It was the first time he had spoken of the future with any certainty, the first time I saw the walls he had built around himself start to crumble. This wasn't just about money or status. It was about healing, about reclaiming the pieces of his past that he had lost, and about giving Sophie a future that was full of hope, not just survival. I'm proud of you, I said softly, and I'm here for both of you. You don't have to do this alone, James. His expression softened, the tension in his shoulders easing. I'm still figuring things out, but I know one thing for sure. I don't want Sophie growing up in the same kind of world I had. I want her to have a better chance, a real chance. And you'll give her that, I said, smiling. You already are. A few weeks later, James officially joined Havenwood Properties. It was a quiet beginning, just as he had asked for. No special treatment, no shortcuts. He started at the bottom, just like anyone else. I made sure he went through the process just like any new hire, so he could prove himself on his own terms. But what he brought to the table wasn't just skill or knowledge. It was his perspective, his empathy. He didn't view real estate as just selling houses. He viewed it as helping people find a place where they could build a life, where they could feel safe, just as Spencer had wanted. By the end of his first year, James had earned the respect of his colleagues, not because of who he was or who his family was, but because of his work ethic and the sincerity he brought to everything he did. He had that rare ability to listen, to understand what people truly needed, and to make sure they got it. And as for Sophie, she flourished. She grew into a bright, curious child full of life and laughter. James had found a rhythm, balancing his new role at Havenwood with his responsibilities as a father. He was present, more than he ever thought he could be, and Sophie had become the heart of everything. One afternoon, a year after James had first stepped into Havenwood, I found myself standing on the balcony of the main house. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the estate. James was walking across the grounds with Sophie in his arms, her tiny hands pointing at the birds flying overhead, her laughter filling the air. I stood there for a long time, watching them. I thought about Spencer, about how he would have been so proud to see his grandson carrying on the work he had started. I thought about all the years that had been lost, years that I couldn't get back. But I also thought about what I had now, a family again, a legacy restored. James and Sophie had found their place here, and I had found my purpose once more. It wasn't just about Havenwood. It was about family, about love, about second chances. And for the first time in decades, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. James approached, a smile on his face,
and for a brief moment, he looked like the young man I had seen under the bridge. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. Hope, strength, and a quiet confidence. "You're right," he said, coming up beside me. "Spencer really did build more than just houses. He built something that lasts." I nodded. Yes, he did. We stood there for a while watching the horizon as the world softened into twilight. And I realized that the cycle of pain and betrayal that had started with Gregory had finally come to an end. The legacy Spencer had built wasn't just about buildings or land. It was about people. It was about giving them something to hold on to, something that would carry them through the hardest times. And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, I knew that our family story was far from over. It was only just beginning.